So I would talk at much greater length and give him a nice boring introduction, but I will stop now so that I can hopefully get Bjo on and turn it over to Joe Mo.
Oh, thanks. Hello, everybody. Are you kidding? I'm so happy to actually see you in the virtual flesh. It's all sci-fi to me. It's perfect. I was privileged to be Forry's closest friend in the last 20 years of his life, and took good care of my hope. I think I like to think so. I wish I was still doing it. But yeah, pretty much everything I learned about how to deal with Hollywood and fandom, I learned from Forry, and I'm happy to tell you that the memory of Forry still can indoctrinate new kids. Every time I talk about him at a panel, at a show, I'm coming to you from New Jersey, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, at the Monster Mania show, a horror convention that Forry would have loved and would have been welcomed at and celebrated as always. But every time I do a panel or get to talk to anybody under 20 about Forry, the next time I see them, 2 years later, they come up to me and they tell me they've become a writer or a filmmaker, or they've just had an enriched and fulfilling experience in fandom, just from the mere, mention, talk, and understanding of Forry's generosity of spirit and his incredible base of knowledge. Forry was one of those historians, as many of you who know him, everything that went in just stayed. For me, if I learn something new, I have to push something out this ear so there's space for it. But he just retained everything that he ever learned, and he passed it on. And the other thing I wanted to mention about Forry that I was really amazed by was that as much as he accomplished and as beloved as he became for his expertise, knowledge, and sort of his Johnny Appleseed nature when it came to sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, Forry was a completely naturally occurring being. It wasn't contrived at all. And people were always stunned when they met Forry and realized that he was this guy that loved stuff, wanted you to know how cool it was, and just walked around the world bumping into stuff. There was no intention to it. There was never any strategy. Forry just existed for us, loved people, loved sharing, was a warts and all guy. If you asked him a question, he didn't have a filter. If it was a question he could answer, he would, never with any regard to how it would make him look, or he just told the truth and got himself into trouble sometimes, as many of us do. I would love to see how he would have fared in this this virtual world of scrutiny. But yeah, that guy is one of the greatest humans I've met, and I've been fortunate, coming from a third generation entertainment family, to have met a lot of people, and Forry's got to be in the top 5 organisms I've ever encountered in my life. So like he would say, well, pal, I'm a sponge, squeeze me while I'm here. And I like to sort of perpetuate that. And if anybody has any questions I could answer about our favorite guy, I'm happy to do it. Meanwhile, a little about me, and then I'll stop monologuing. Basically, I came here from Hawaii to Hollywood, did everything I could to find my way into entertainment. Met Forry in the second year. I'd read Famous Monsters, of course, like many people, and knew all about him. For many of us in small towns, and for me in an island, Forry was my connection to the bigger world of imagination that I loved and wanted to be a part of. So I came here and didn't visit him first thing because I was terrified. I was so intimidated. And when I finally met him after 2 years, took a look around the house, and I thought, how do I separate myself from all of these fans who are clamoring for his time and attention? And I looked around and I figured it out. So at the end of my visit, I said, Mr. Ackerman, do you need help cleaning this place up? He said, oh, come back tomorrow, come back, stay, I'll take you to lunch. And so I went and I sort of started helping clean up, and I never left. And we became very close friends, and I'm happy to say I gained his trust and just spent the next 20 years with him. There's Bjo. Hey, Bjo.
Hey, man.
So happy to see you.
Oh, okay.
Joe, Bjo is in.
Yay, she's always been in.
I'm a little shorter than Joe. So, okay. Sorry for the interruption, but she's here. So continue. We're sorry.
I was just introducing myself. Bjo needs no introduction. She's an incredible force to be reckoned with, and a damn nice person on top of it. I've not met many more accomplished people who are as kind and generous as she was. A perfect pairing of Bjo and Forry
I'm
Ackerman.
gonna hang up now.
Generous with time and spirit. And Bjo, I still remember all of the advice you ever gave me, including the stuff I can't repeat here. But I'm so happy to see you. I love you very much. Can you hear us okay? I'm not hearing you.
Yeah, well, life has been a little interesting, so, and I'm gonna get a pillow so I can see if I can see you.
Well, Bjo is making those adjustments I often have to make because I take a cushion to restaurants with me. I'm so short, you know, I don't want to eat fork under my chin. So,
I know
but
what you
anyway,
mean.
here she comes down.
I elevate my computer so you can only see one or two of mine. So that's my strategy.
That's a good idea. All right, so now I think the gang's all here. And we will go on with the show. So Joe, I had to miss some of it, but just don't worry about it. It will all be recorded and people can catch the whole thing. And I will edit out all of our opening stuff.
Okay. I was just giving a bit of my history and talking about how I met Forry. And of course, I met Bjo through Forry. And I still have a copy of the film they made together, The Genie, where our Bjo is an exotic belly dancer of the highest order. And yeah, it's been a great trip.
I've got people arriving here. That's the problem with a home that people can walk in at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. I guess I'm going again.
Well, we'll manage. No worries.
Good.
We're fine. If you could just speak a little bit louder or put your head just a little closer to the source.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's fine.
I'm going to end up skipping across the room if I'm not careful. So there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. All right.
Okay, Joe. So
yeah, so I mean, Bjo's here. I'm you know, as long as I've known Bjo, I'm still in awe when she's in the room. So I'm kind of gobsmacked. But in closing, you know, my job now is thanks to Forry and his introduction to me of the value in preserving and collecting props. I've been in the auction business for about 20 years, and I've directed the department's pop culture at Bonhams, and I'm now the director of studio auctions, specializing in entertainment, pop culture memorabilia. And, you know, and just another footprint that Forry left that has enriched my life and given me a great application to be near the stuff I love. So that's sort of my introduction to Forry and where it's taken me for the time being. But there's so many planets in between we've all visited together. But I wanna sort of, I'm here, I want to hear what Bjo has to say because I never get tired of that. It doesn't happen often enough.
that's right. Thank you, Joe. No, we're happy that you're here, and I missed your introduction to Forry, but I presume you explained for those people who have been under a rock for 50 years who Forry is. Okay, Bjo, you want to tell us who you are? I should introduce you. I mean, Bjo saved Star Trek. She and her husband, John. We would not have the series Star Trek without the two of them and their write-in campaign. And if they hadn't written in and got it that third season, it would never have gone into reruns and syndication. So we would not, probably not most of us know of it. And we do know of it. And it's due to these two, Bjo and her late husband, John, who we were sorry to lose in April of this year. Sorry to note his passing. So this is probably one of the first appearances that we're honored that Bjo made since that, and it's something that we appreciate. That it's not easy. So we hope that this will be an upper, and talking about all of the things that you and John did and that you did will be good for all of us. But Bjo in her own right has done so many accomplishments. She's a magistra of medieval culture. She's in the Creative Anachronist Society. She had a thriving business in dyeing of natural dyeing of fabrics and in the fiber arts. She's all over the map, and she was in, as you heard, in some films and just all over Hollywood. So we have many sides of Bjo, which I can't hope to do justice to. And she knows the lore of Hollywood and science fiction fandom going back to the 1950s. So Bjo, I hope that just as a brief, parts of you, not all of you, we'll hand it over to you for a little bit. Just tell whatever you feel
People
like.
can ask questions if they're
Yeah, maybe
puzzled
if
by it.
people have questions
Yeah,
about various
That's-
figures in fandom or in the great world of, I mean, she know all the famous ones. You can ask her about Ray Bradbury and people like that.
yeah. Well, yeah. The sometimes you get some fun things that get a phone call and John answers the phone and the voice says, "This is Art, and I speak to Bjo." And John goes, "Art who?" And he said, "Arthur C. Clarke."
Mm.
And that was, so that's how John got acquainted with him. And so, but we just had that wonderful luck to people that we have become very fond of, for the most part. Let's be fair about that. I've been very fond of most of the people I've met, even Joe.
Well, what were your
Okay.
interactions with Forry? I mean, we're kind of giving Forry
Oh.
some time, and I wanted to dedicate this meeting. We hadn't had the kerfluffle at the beginning. I wanted to dedicate this meeting to Forry, to his memory.
Well, I'm
How did you
sorry.
meet Forry?
Oh, golly. Well, Forry went to every single Worldcon, I believe, and I knew that it was a tradition that the person you saw when you walked in the hotel was Forry. And someone said that I needed to meet him. And I said, okay, so, somebody called him over and he came over, and that was it. I mean, we just met, and it was like a light going on. And his house was indescribable because it didn't look like anybody else's house.
Could
And
I interrupt
I was,
you, Joe? Just a
ah,
second. Just a second. Could everybody turn off your screens? I'm going to turn my screen off. It says your bandwidth is low, and maybe it will help the sound if we all turn off our pictures. Turn
sure.
off your screens, everybody. Bjo, if you want to leave yours on, that's okay, but it says your bandwidth is low. It might help if while you're talking, you just temporarily turn it off.
Sure.
That's,
It'll take a minute.
stop video.
Think how to do that.
See if it helps.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now, where am I supposed to do that? I am
the little
um,
camera where it says start video, stop video, off to the bottom left.
oh, there's nothing there.
Okay, well, where you used to have the microphone and the camera at the bottom.
Then it's gone now.
Oh, it's gone.
Huh.
Well, never mind. I think it's gotten a little better since everybody's.
Sorry.
It sounds better. Okay, we were starting to discuss Forry's mansion, the Acker mansion.
Well, the first thing that Forry did was invite me and my husband John and our two children to see his house. and very big
Take them to the bedroom.
okay, I have that I forget words occasionally. But it was a very prestigious thing to invite our children into his house. He didn't do that very often. And he had watched them at the convention and had decided that they wouldn't tear up his house and, you know, that sort of thing, which was cool because they were welcome at his house all the time. And he became Uncle Forry. And he was, they were very surprised when they discovered that he was not a relative. And you know, but then
Maybe
he was Uncle
maybe
Forry.
Bjo can speak up. I'm not getting anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shall I lean forward? I don't know. I don't, you know, help me here. Can you hear me now? Hello? Oh,
Bjo
I'm just
Coster is in
talking.
Africa, and sometimes his connection is very sporadic. So we'll do the best we can, Coster, but you know, she's in a she has limitations where she is. So you may have to just watch it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
that's exciting though. I'd love to visit Africa sometime, but right now I'm dealing with the fact that I'm 90 and my family keeps reminding me of that. So anyway, I'll try to make sure that you can hear me. If anybody else has a problem, let me know. Forry and the Trimbles just became instant friends, and it was so wonderful to deal with him because he was such a funny person, and he had so many interesting things in his collection, and I contributed to quite a few of them when I would run across something that was available. I'm not a dumpster diver, but I'm sure good at talking other people into dumpster diving and coming up some interesting stuff. So especially when they were tearing down the various sets from some of the science fiction movies. I would climb up and 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 see what was in the picture, and then uh, talk some sturdy young man into going in and bringing stuff out for me and allowing me into Forry's collection. So I figured that was perfectly fair because if they're going to throw it out, it really belongs to the rest of it. So that was, I don't know, seemed right, seemed okay to me. And so they only called me once and they told me not to do that anymore. And I nodded my head like I was agreeing with them, and they went away and I went back to dumpster diving. So
Okay, Bjo,
But-
could I move to another important topic in your life, which is that campaign? Well, first of all, tell about your knowledge and your friendship with George Takei, for one. I think people will be interested in that. And also your whole connection. You're a huge, what would you say, icon of Trek fandom. You know, can you describe your relationship with that group?
well, it started when in the at the Worldcon in what was it? Anyway, it was somewhere in West, and I this is where I met Gene Roddenberry because I was running a
Was it the art
little,
show?
no,
Was it the art show?
fashion. No, it
Fashion
was a
show.
futuristic show,
Mhm.
and they asked if they could put three of Roddenberry's costumes in it to help advertise this new show. I said, I never heard of it. I don't ever heard of Roddenberry. I have no idea who the person is, but I have 20 costumes, and there's way too many to fit into the time factor they've given me. And I'm using, basically amateurs, and they're not going to finish in time. And so, no, you can't add more costumes. I'm sorry, but no. And a few minutes later, this tall, good-looking guy comes up and says, "Are you Bjo Trimble?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'd like to talk to you." And I thought, oh, I'm trying to get something done here, and now I have somebody, And he said, "I'll buy you a cup of coffee." And I said, "Okay." And we went off, and 20 minutes later, that silver-tongued devil had talked his way into my costume show. And the girls had been hired. They were all looking at losing a job. And so they offered to help with the makeup and starting the costumes and so on. And I ended up with three costumes, two of them from Mud's Women and one of them from oh, it's her and the first um, outfit. Can't remember now. Sorry. And
That's okay. It doesn't
uh,
matter, Bjo. What they're interested in is your work with meeting people like George Takei and,
George was an easy one to meet because he lived a few blocks from us, and he ran past our house quite often. And so we would have maybe fans visiting us that they had no idea what was going on. And George would run up on our porch and he'd say, "Come join me and we'll go running." And I would say, "Get off the porch," because I'm not a runner. And he'd run off laughing uproariously, as George did and still does. And these fans would wonder, here I am throwing George off my porch. And he was a lovely person, and it was easy to talk to, easy to deal with. And he knew that I didn't run. So it was just his way of having fun with me. Uh, and he and Phil knew that George was gay, and he, for reasons of his work, he didn't share this. However, when it got a little dicey for people who were in either in the business or in other businesses that get in trouble with them, he came out and he and Brad made a pair in, in public. And I've always thought that was really neat that he did this, and it to make it a public thing, and that he did it without other people telling him to.
that's wonderful, Bjo. And did you know, I have a what do you call it, civil rights part of Star Trek. You probably know about this. You remember Michelle Nichol, who played Uhura?
Sure.
Well,
Uh-huh.
did you know she had a letter from Martin Luther King or a call from him because she was thinking
Yeah.
of leaving? You want to tell that story? Because that's an important civil rights part that people don't know, I don't think.
Well, yes. She, poor Uhura only got to say, you know, we've got a call coming type of thing. And that was it. And so she was feeling that she was not really getting very far. And when she said this, where Martin Luther King could hear it, he said she can't leave. And it was really important that she stay on and let her character tell the story of Laura and how she could be somebody that would be very valuable for them to have on the show. And you may notice that at this time, she was given some other parts where, for instance, her console went, something happened there, and you saw her down on the floor working on her own console, and she had that kind of ability, and it gave the watchers the impression that she was far more in, involved in the ship and all this than was thought. And I thought it was very good for her, and she liked it too. And
That's fascinating history. And also, didn't she have the first interracial kiss on American TV?
yeah, she said that was a funny thing because the this first kiss, they totally ignored that they had also gotten an alien kiss between Spock and poor Nurse Chapel, but it was such a thing that nobody thought much about how it was going to happen and how all of these people were going to react. Well, needless to say, the entire South, had, there were people who literally turned off their TV and wouldn't watch it, which I find a little strange, but all right. And they that entire episode was an extremely weird thing because they also had the little midget who was being beat up and nobody really did much about this little guy. And he mentioned that, by the way, when I talked to him. And but he got to jump around and he was being magically mistreated, and so it was kind of fun to do this, but he kept wondering why somebody didn't reach out and come to his rescue. And
Well, that's part I didn't know. We'll have to look up, and if somebody gets a chance before we go off, find the name of that episode. So if people want to, or I'll send it out to the mailing list with our next announcement. So these are wonderful stories of your importance to not only Star Trek fandom, but to all of us. Oh, Chris Merle just gave it. Plato's Stepchildren is the name of that episode.
Thank you.
Yeah, there it is.
And the little guy it was a very well known actor and showed up in several Star Trek episodes. And they were, because he was somebody that they knew could do just about anything they wanted him to.
Well, we'll have to look up his name too, because that's another civil rights area of little people,
Yeah.
rights. It's an important one that gets overlooked, and disability rights too. So
Just, boy, that's a new one too. And I have to tell you, I'm one who has a little a walker, and if I'm going to go someplace like Comic Con, I have to be in a wheelchair now.
oh,
So that's one reason I'm not a runner.
yeah. Well, you're running a lot better than most of us will be at 90. So
Well, yeah, the family would go down to the corner, because most in those days the marathon that passed that corner, and we'd hand out glasses of water, not glasses, but cups. And then afterwards, Catherine would help our mentally handicapped one would help clean up, because of course they would drink and you just throw the cup, and so, but Catherine
Oh,
thought that was
your daughter is a shining example of people who have come back from having obstacles in their lives, and you have done an excellent job of being there for her and helping her achieve what she can in her life. And I
okay.
think people should know that about you. So you aren't just in vanish, you have other like dimensions of being a great person. So I have, God, now my mind is wandering, but there was some other thing, some other aspect of life. Oh, I know. Do you mind if I get into the John Steinbeck part of your life, the Okie part?
No, not at all.
Because I think people
No,
should
go
know
ahead.
about this. I told Ida, and
Oh,
people are told
wow.
over. I mean, I was actually almost laid out on the floor when I heard how Okies were treated in California when you came from Oklahoma in the Dust Bowl. And you cited what some kindergarten teacher said in class about Okie.
Yeah,
Okay, you want to?
I heard one teacher tell another that you might as well put the Okies in that room with the Mexes and the Niggies, because they were too stupid to learn anything.
So that got garbled on my end. I think it was some epithets about race and Okies.
Oh yeah, very strong.
The Mexes and the N words and the
Yep.
Okies could sit in the back because they were all too stupid to learn. I knew this from Grapes of Wrath, that there were certain obstacles, but you are part of that history. You're not just talking about, you are part of that history of Okies who came to California. And how did that kind of shape your determination, or, how would you characterize that?
Well, when we left the Dust Bowl, which had covered about half of our house, and had killed off most of the animals, I was 4 years old, and I still have a good memory of that. And when we packed the car, it was just a pile of stuff. And because people pack what they think they need, and that is always true. And that my family would say, okay, climb up and climb over the top of everything, find a corner somewhere in all of this, and settle down. And they didn't expect to hear from me then for, a few hours. And that's the way I traveled to California. we got to the border of Arizona and California, and we were not allowed to cross the border. The family was stopped there, and we were told to go home. Well, we had no home to go to, so that was another thing. And we had no job, no money coming in. My mother went to a little trucker restaurant and got a job and was working by the afternoon. She was a very determined person. I didn't like my mother very much. She didn't like her kids either, so it kind of worked out, weirdly. But I have to say that she was a very determined female. And if you want to know what she looked like, just figure a sort of a little cartoon character of the oh, I forgot the name again. Anyway, my father had already left. I now refer to him as my sperm donor. That's the closest. I have no idea what happened to him, and we went there. So I grew up with an assortment of stepfather, 10 get that. And why my mother kept marrying these guys, I have no idea. But there you go. And so between her being very determined about herself and me being very determined that I was going to do better than these other relatives of mine, it was the way I grew up.
You were really amazing.
Hmm?
You were amazing. I'm sorry, I thought you were stopping there temporarily. You were an amazing overachiever, they would say now, because you've made so many people's lives better, and not only in the science fiction Trek community, but I think in any community that you interact with. You are a brilliant person, that's obvious, but you're also a very caring person. And I knew that grit came from somewhere.
Really strange, but I'm like a lot of people, even when they are grumpy and uh, uh, it still works for me. Uh, Joe can remember some of Forry's friends that came and wanted to just cry about how bad everybody was and how bad the situation of the world was and everything like that. And it was one of these, well, can you find something good about this? And they would go, well, no. And okay, well, then how about changing it? What do you mean changing it? So, yeah, because there's no sense in going on like this if you can't figure some way to do better. Then you ought to move on and just not worry people about these things. And I don't know if I did anything right or wrong with that, but at least it was getting people to think about something else. And sometimes it worked out very well. Thank you.
Yes, you did. You were a diplomat, and so was Forry. So maybe we should let Joe have a few words now about Forry and you know some of his. He was a global goodwill ambassador, and I know Joe knows some things. Do you mind if we let him chime in now with some
Not
Forry?
at all.
Okay, Joe, take it over.
Boom, I'm back. This is fascinating. I could just sit here on my hotel bed and just listen all day. Yeah, I guess some things I can tell you about Forry that aren't common knowledge is he didn't really have many regrets. And I think the reason that Forry and I became so close, like Bjo, is very candid with him. Always gave my opinion. I could be wrong, I could be mistaken, but I always told the truth with Forry because he gave me that dignity and respect as well. But one of the things that I once asked Forry, and he would answer anything you asked him if he had an answer. Didn't matter, like I said earlier, it didn't matter if it reflected poorly on him or, you know, he was never very self-aware of that. But one day I asked him, I said, Forry, you've had such a life. Is there any regrets? And he thought about it, and he would do this. He'd go, think about it. And I thought he was going to say no, but he said, well, there's one, pal. And I said, well, what is it for? He said, I always wish I was taken more seriously as a writer. And that touched me because he'd elevated so many people, from our friend, our Papa Ray Bradbury, who he discovered on a street corner selling newspapers at 14, and said, this precocious kid needs to come to the science fiction, club and talk and meet his peers, even though they're older, and really facilitated so many people achieving beyond their resources and beyond their circumstances. He didn't know he was doing that. But if he identified somebody that was deserving of attention or that had something to offer, he made sure that he put his money where his mouth was. He always liked to say, well, I made sure that Ray Bradbury could come to the banquet. It was $1 a plate, no food, of course, just a plate. And, puns, as Bjo will tell you, puns were Forry's way of getting his shoe in the room. Forry was a painfully shy person. He would remind people of that, and we'd all go, "What?" But it's true. He said on his way to the very first science fiction convention in New York, he almost got off the train 6 times because he was so afraid that he'd have to speak publicly. And of course, he grew used to having his stories, but without his stories, he would have been, he was very quiet and reserved. But he collected so many stories. By the end of his life, he could just recite them, till the end of time, and fascinating people he'd met and things he'd done. And one thing I like to talk about when I'm talking about Forry is that one of the reasons he became our mentor and became such a figure in our community is because he was always there for us. He would, for example, he talked about meeting Walt Disney at the Snow White Cafe in Hollywood. And Forry didn't go up to Walt Disney and say, oh, Mr. Disney, I have a collection. No, he went up to him and said, Mr. Disney, my readers and famous monsters would love to know if you actually used Bela Lugosi for the Chernabog and Night of Bald Mountain and Fantasia. And Disney said, well, yes, actually, we brought him in for a screen test. And so Forry was always sort of our uncle. He was the portal to all of these things we couldn't reach as kids, and was constantly thinking of other people, thinking of us. And if Forry would recite one of his many lists to you, it was always about who he'd met and what he'd gotten to do. It was never about, people sometimes mistook that for Forry self-aggrandizing. But really, if you really listen to what he was talking about, he was sort of taking you along on this charmed life that he'd managed to have, and never thought of himself as a celebrity. I sat at many conventions with him where people my age would come up shaking with tears in their eyes and say, Mr. Ackerman, you made my childhood. I'm a filmmaker because of you. I'm a doctor because of you. I'm this, that, the other thing. And at the end of the night, I'd say, okay, Forry, so now do you understand that you're a celebrity? And he'd go, no. He never quite got it. So Forry was a naturally occurring, alien. We called him the boy from Mars. And that was what you saw is what you got, and it was pretty fancy, a fancy naturally occurring organism.
Well, his relationship with Bela Lugosi was one he used to quite often repeat. And of course, we want to hear about you as well. I don't want to neglect you, but maybe one or two of those, the Vincent
Sure,
Price.
well,
you know.
Forry, Forry, luckily, like we all were to Forry, his caretakers and his nieces and nephews that constantly looked in on him and took care of him. When Forry met Bela, he was not in great health. He was in the last few years of his life. And Forry, like many of us did with Forry, he sort of ingratiated himself to Lugosi just by helping. He'd take his shoes to get resoled. He'd invite him and take him to dinners and sort of look after him. And Lugosi was very, very grateful for that. Not everyone that was around him, including his then wife, was very charitable with him, and was very controlling. And Bela was not able to defend himself easily because he was really up there and pretty frail. So Forry and Wendane, his wife, who I had the pleasure of knowing as well, would really include him in as many events and things that would be good for him as possible. And also, that's sort of what we did with Forry as he got up there. A bunch of us recognized that there were, different types of fans. Some of them were sort of never going to come down from the clouds, and good for them. I mean, we all get there at some point. But what he really needed is he needed a core group of people around him that didn't really need anything from him, but wanted to give everything to him. So, we assembled everybody from, movie producers to directors to pretty well-known people and established rocket sciences, anybody that really didn't have anything to gain from Forry other than his well-being. And I think that really helped the quality of his life not only maintain, but elevate in the last 10 years of his life.
Bob just asked if Forry, did he ever meet Ed Wood?
Forry liked to say, well, I was Ed Wood's illiterary agent. And he was Ed Wood's agent. And I said, one day I said, Forry, tell me about Ed. And he said, well, he was just really a drunken voice at the end of the phone at 2 a.m. If one of his movies would come on, he'd call and he'd say, oh, Forry. So I didn't really have much contact with him, although, he did consult with Ed. Ed was a fan of Forry's, as well as as we know, a very ambitious, very charismatic filmmaker who, again, succeeded beyond his resources and beyond, what you would expect, from sheer force of will and charisma, and inspiring, like Forry did, inspiring the people around him to dream bigger. So yeah, Forry knew Ed and was his agent for a time.
One
I
other
think
one.
Forry was,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. Forry was an agent to an awful lot of people, and it was in some cases it was just a he couldn't bring some of these people into pay-in authors and so on. He sure tried,
He did.
and he would take people that would in fact talk about him, well, this son of a gun isn't helping me. And if you knew how badly he was trying to actually bring this person forward, it would make you cry. But they never appreciated what he was doing.
Yeah,
And,
he could, Bjo, as we know, he could conceivably be somewhat responsible for Scientology, as he sort of was the first voice that sparked L. Ron Hubbard to write science fiction. He said he was in a bookshop in LA, and he heard this very precocious young man talking to the clerk, flirting with her and saying, I have stories in every one of these combat and Western magazines. And of course, our uncle Ackerman chimed in and said, you think you could write sci-fi? And he said, I haven't yet, but I could, and started spinning all these yarns, and then made his way up to Forry's office and told him about all of these confabulations and ideas he had. And Forry became his agent and was supposed to be L. Ron's agent for life. But of course, Artist Services, once it became the big religious conglomeration that it did, they sort of pushed Forry out. Forry always believed that he was disenfranchised to the tune of $12 million in royalties and whatnot for their arrangement, but that never came true. And that's another story that's fascinating, because Forry and Wayne, his wife, were some of the first auditors in Dianetics. And while Forry backed away from it when it started becoming a little bit voodoo for him, when Dane went through and became one of the first certified auditors, and Forry claims that she actually cured him through that process, which at the point of Dianetics was more talk therapy and hypnotism almost, because L. Ron had been a hypnotist, cured Forry of his phobia about dogs. So that's just an interesting story altogether, that relationship.
Oh, I remember the story, you know, with dogs. That's an odd one. I like dogs so much that I was always a little shocked that he was not, you know, okay.
I have another aspect. I'm sorry, Bjo. I just wanted to bring up Vincent Price because it seemed like he had a joke about Vincent Price. You know, he looked like a little bit like Vincent Price, and he would make a lot of that.
The older he became, the more they looked alike, and they were good friends. And Forry's pun at open houses would be, well, you know, some people say I have a striking resemblance to Vincent Price. So when he's too expensive, they can have me for half price. That was his Vincent Price pun. And he also always bragged about a little girl named Jasmine who came to visit his house, and Forry had a chair that his great-great-grandfather had photographed the President Abraham Lincoln sitting in. And so he had this giant penny that sat on the chair, on Lincoln's chair, and this little 12-year-old girl named Jasmine came in, and he said, oh, this is Abraham Lincoln's chair. And she said, oh, you know, Mr. Ackerman, I'm only 12. I haven't studied history yet. And he said, well, this penny, do you know who that is? She said, Vincent Price. And he loved that. So that was one of his Vincent.
Shall we open it up now to any questions from the crowd here? Anybody who has a famous person among the science fiction authors, Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, or, you know, others that, and films. We haven't even gotten into, you know, we don't have time, but Forry had innumerable stories about Universal stars and just.
That's true. I wanted to make a comment about Bjo and Forry, another similarity. It's just beyond imagining, which is why I don't think the general population often imagines it, how many films and how many projects Bjo has saved and how many films Forry has inspired by their spark in the origins of promoting science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and Bjo rescuing, you know, for us fans, Star Trek. What she established has gone on to save many programs over time. The ripples that she made in that pond by dropping that pebble in the center of it is immeasurable. Just as Forry's, you know, this is why we can rattle off a bunch of people, from Steven Spielberg, who read Forry's magazine Famous Monsters as a kid, made his first movie wrapping his sisters up in blue toilet paper, his first mummy movie. Or Rick Baker, 9-time Oscar winner, who said, hey, wait a minute, it's not the doctors and dentists that make monsters, it's the makeup artists. Guillermo del Toro, the generations of people that have given us so much because people like Forry, in some big way, influenced them quietly, and Bjo, so many programs and followed her map of activism when it comes to making sure that you know, we could impose a sort of democracy on entertainment and show business. I just wanted to give credit to that because it continues to today. If somebody doesn't like the idea their show's getting canceled or wants to make a noise about it, they can refer to Bjo's map because she did it successfully, and it was no accident. It was a huge, strategic, well-planned machine that was learning as it went, but was so effective that it won. And I think that that's really important to acknowledge.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for bringing all that up. And, you know, put it concisely, but that's where credit is due. And I know for a lot of people coming in cold, because this is a very mixed group, and those who will watch it on YouTube even more so. But yeah, I mean, that's what I hope people would come to and get out of it. But you need someone like you, Joe, to contextualize it. So.
Well, I've been the beneficiary of all of that, and so proud to have known, you know, people like Forry and Bjo. they inspire me every day, and I pass that on as often as I can. And it's incredible how potent it is, just secondhand, just sharing with people what the possibilities are when you maintain imagination, take action, and gather together with as many like-minded people who love what you love as possible. Something obscure called sci-fi can become, you know, a world-changing juggernaut that is at the core of the biggest blockbusters that we watch today, and that the general public takes for granted. But it started with people like Forry and Bjo.
And Ray Bradbury. I wanted to bring him in because he spent his life giving credit to libraries. His family could not, he could not afford college. And he became a great, well, you know, everybody fades after a while, but he's still a household word a lot.
It's incredible. I want to tell one last story, and then turn it over, because blah, blah, blah. I get very passionate and excited about this because I miss seeing you in person, Bjo, and I sure miss Forry. But you know, I want to tell you how Ray really inspired me into the life that I'm able to live today. Whenever Forry and Ray got together, I sort of took a back seat, because coming from showbiz, you know when it's about you and when it's about other people. And I think I was really successful with Forry because it was always about him, and I knew that. As much as I wanted to get near Christopher Lee, or I wanted to go talk to Roddy McDowall, you know, whoever he happened to be in the room with, it was about Forry. I would observe. But with Ray, they spent time together, and so every now and then I'd have my moment. And I remember, I think they were doing a anniversary celebration at Clifton's Cafeteria downtown for Lost Fest. I think that was what it was. And so the two Rays, Ray Harryhausen and Ray Bradbury, who I'm so privileged to have known, and Forry were there. And Ray Harryhausen left, which left me and Ray Bradbury and Forry waiting for their cars to come and pick them up. And as often happened when I was quietly waiting there, Ray turned up and said, "So, son, what are you all about? What are you working on?" And I said, "Well, Papa Ray, I got to tell you that thanks to you, I've really taken to writing." He said, "Oh, really? Oh, I'm so happy to. What do you write?" And I said, "Well, you know, I think I have affinity for screenwriting." And he said, "Oh, son, you don't want to do that. You have to have a thick skin, and no one will ever know what you've done." He said, "Oh, you have to be sure that's what you want to do." And I said, "Well, I kind of enjoyed it." "Oh, you enjoy. What are some of your favorite screenplays?" I said, "Oh my goodness, All About Eve, The Godfather, Moby Dick, The Exorcist." He said, "Who adapted Moby Dick to the screen?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "I did." And I went, "Point taken." And at his birthday, I think at the next birthday, he gave me a 3-sheet poster of Moby Dick, and he'd scratched out John Huston's name and written his above it. That's
great. Oh, that's great. I never heard that one. And I'm a big fan of Ray Bradbury. And oh my God, that's a story I've never heard. But thank you for telling that one.
Sure. I just wanted to share that. I love.
There's a whole hour in just Ray Bradbury reminiscences. Maybe we'll do that someday. But no, did anybody have anything you want to ask these two legends in their own time?
In my opinion, Bjo is a legend, bona fide.
A question, a comment before the question. Joe, you maybe may know this, but there is one of the houses that Ray Bradbury lived in Tucson, and they did a home tour, and you could actually visit it during this home tour, stuff like that. So I thought it was pretty exciting. Now to my question. It's about a movie that I think is the best Star Trek movie ever made, which is Galaxy Quest. I'm curious what Forry and Bjo thought of this film. So,
well, our family loved it. I watch it frequently because it just has all of the things in it that we enjoy in the science fiction movies. I wish they had gotten off the dime and done a sequel almost immediately instead of waiting. But Hollywood doesn't seem to have the intelligence to do that. But I think that I saw a interview of William Shatner about Galaxy Quest, and they said, "Well, what did you think?" And he said, "Well, several of us watched it together, and it was was funny as hell. And he just, when I use that, then I swear on, and that he says, but even though it cut very close to the bone, it made us want more of this kind of movie, and they didn't give it to us, and we're a little upset. But we have a good point. So, you're up.
Forry's a
Uh,
For I gotta say, I think Forry just thought, I mean, I don't think you saw the irony in it that much, but I certainly, in the case of my favorite documentaries and other things like that, for me, I just felt that it's one of those things that makes a mockery of something that we love, but it's made by people that love it as much as we do. There was so much love in that movie for the genre, for fandom, and for what the convention business is all like. And I ran a convention called Mad Monster for 10 years. So none of the
you did.
insight was lost on me. I thought it was just such a, I guess you call it a Valentine.
I might ask why I wasn't invited to your convention.
You know, you are anything I do, you are always invited to. Anything.
Bless you.
Even coffee,
Yes, well.
coffee, donuts, anything I do.
Right, yeah. Well,
But
That's
speaking
another-
of the show, I have to get back down on the floor. I'm at the show in Cherry Hill. I'm at Monster Mania, and I have to run back down there and go back to work on my Saturday. So I hope you don't mind me ducking out. I'm wearing, in honor of the Rays and Forry, I am wearing a King Kong shirt.
Oh, right.
All three of their favorite movies, which I thought was really cute that
Alright.
the teenagers loved that movie together. And now some of their prodigies like Peter Jackson and many others share that love. But thank you so much for having me, and I hope that we can do it again sometime.
Yeah.
BJ, I adore
Yeah.
you. I love you. I'm so happy to see you, and I hope we can talk again soon. Thanks, everybody, and
Thank you for coming.
sure,
And
get me on social media if you want to continue talking about all this stuff. I never.
yeah, I think we could do something maybe highlighting Ray Bradbury and bring Bjo back and
I
others.
love it. I mean, Bjo through her career and her work, and me through proximity with Forry, so many people we've had just the privilege of seeing and knowing. And I think with Bjo especially, she has such a wealth of knowledge and relationship to all the stuff that they were involved in love that she's I've never seen her be starstruck in any way. She's just like one of the gang. So I think that benefited and contributed to her getting such great relationships with some of these people, For me, I get a lot of esteem from having looked after their mentor, Forry, because I sort of stood back. But with Bjo, she's just one of the gang, which is really exciting to hear her talk about those people. So I will jet off now. Thank you all for your time, and thanks for including me in this incredible, fun little reminiscence. I
Nice
appreciate it.
seeing
Sending the
you.
link
Yeah.
to Joe if you want to share it on YouTube when we get it up on YouTube.
I will for sure.
I will
Take
edit
care.
it. Believe me, I will edit it.
Forrest J. Ackerman shall not die. I'll see you soon.
No,
So long.
so long. Okay, are there any other questions before we let Bjo off the hook and let her get on to her lunch there over at in California? Any other Q&A?
Not quite yet. I see, Chris, that you're wearing a LeVar Burton shirt.
Yes, he is.
I like that. Yeah. He gets now so much credit, and he deserves it, for encouraging children to read. And you may know, I have a daughter who has a mental problem, and she's about I'd say cat in the hat level of reading. And yeah, she knows LeVar Burton. Well, she's met him, and but she knows him on TV, and is always commenting about what a neat person he is and how much he has encouraged people to read. And I think that's very cool. So
Indeed, yeah. He and Oprah Winfrey and a number of others, including Ray Bradbury, who always touted for
yeah,
libraries, all the time. So we have our champions of literacy.
well, and I think that's really the only way. I mean, I was reading when I was 4 years old, and I would just go to thrift shops and pick out really ratty old books because I knew that they would probably give me those kinds. And I was right, and I could take those home. And so, and I, according to my mother, I would just follow her around and I would and say, "What's this word? What's this word? What's this word?" And so
You
that's
were,
one way to learn to
were a
read.
force to be reckoned with, even at 4. Well, any other what comments to Bjo before we let her go? We're all so thrilled and happy that you could make it. And it was a
Well,
great,
thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Even if it took me forever
Thank
to
you.
sign in, I'm sorry about that.
Well, these things happen. I
I'm
should have
not,
done a run through. That was my fault. So
yeah,
thank
well,
you so much.
I,
Now that you've done it, we won't have that
Yeah.
happen when we do Ray Bradbury night or something morning. Okay, folks, if
oh,
that's it,
okay.
we'll say have a great day and keep Forry and all of these folks in mind. That's what they lived for. Okay,
Absolutely.
take care. They deserve it. They all deserve it. Take care.
Okay.
We'll see y'all later.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome, Bjo. It was an honor.
It was interesting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Now I
Bye-bye.
have to figure
Yeah,
out
we're down